class. So today I'll be sharing my reaction video of Richard Berger Lee's article, Eating Christmas in Kalahari. So in this video, I'll summarize the article of what happened, and then I'll discuss how worldview shapes cultural interpretation, identify ethnocentric bias, reflect on cultural norms, and I'll connect it to some of the experience I've had in my life and end it with the biggest lesson I learned from it. So the summary of this article is where Richard Lee, an anthropologist is kind of someone who just dives into different cultures, kind of like reflects on it and then tells others about it. And he was hanging out with the Klung people located in southern Africa, and he really wanted to thank them after hanging out with them. And to them, it was kind of like Christmas. It's like a celebration that they do. It's full of like dancing and music and everything. And he wanted to thank them during this time by providing them a large ox for Christmas. And obviously in the Western mindset, giving a big gift it's really nice. It's pretty much guaranteed to get a thank you and appreciation and respect from giving a gift. And instead of doing this, the Klung people ridiculed his ox. They called it thin, worthless, too skinny to even eat. And Lee got really frustrated and embarrassed about this. Like, he dumped all of this money in finding the biggest ox he can possibly buy to give these people, and they just mocked him for it and mocked the meat. And after he got super frustrated and mad about it, he later on discovered that the people were actually doing a cultural practice of theirs. It was called insulting the meat. The Klung people do this so that nobody in their tribe becomes super arrogant or boastful. It keeps everyone super humble, and it provides equality within their community. So the impact of worldview on cultural interpretation. So in this story, it highlights how worldview shapes meaning. From Lee's perspective, he was supposed to get praised for bringing such a nice gift, and he assumed the Klung people would share his cultural values of showing gratitude. But in their worldview, they prioritize humility and community over providing individual recognition. So what looked like rudeness to him was actually a way of reinforcing equality among everyone. And this shows how two different worldviews can interpret the same action in completely opposite ways. One clear ethnic bias was Lee's initial belief that his cultural way of gift giving was the norm or the right way. He thought that by doing this, it would be nice. And it's not saying that what he did was rude, but it's saying that he assumed that was what was supposed to happen. And he saw their response as ungrateful and rude and quite mean, to be honest. And his worldview shaped that bias because he assumed he was supposed to receive generosity and praise from it. Only later did he realize that he misread the situation because he was filtering it through his own cultural lens instead of taking a second to look at what it looks like from their end. So one of the challenges to cultural norms, this story provides the challenges of cultural norms are universal. In many Western settings, giving someone a gift almost guarantees praise and thanks, but the Klung people saw it differently. This forced me to reflect that sometimes I think obvious or normal things, in my opinion, might be totally different in other cultures and different places of the world. It's a reminder that no single cultural's values are automatically best or the most correct. They all have a pro and a con, I would say. Like in the Western way, in this story. He gave them something out of his own kindness as a gesture, which has its pro, but the con is individual recognition. And for the Klung people, their pro was providing humility and like equality between everyone rather than individual recognition. So one of the unique norms of my own culture is tipping in restaurants. This is such a big one. I've had so many conversations with exchange students because middle school I used to have a lot of exchange students over, and whenever we'd go out to eat, for us in the USA, it's very, very normal to leave a 15 or 20% tip from your bill. And for Americans, it shows appreciation for the service and it's assumed that you will tip. But for outsiders, it often is seen differently. Some will take it as disrespect to the workers, assuming they don't get paid enough. Some think it's unnecessary and unfair to workers who rely on tips. This shows how worldview really matters, and what looks generous to one group can be completely rude and disrespectful to another. I think the best practice for cross-cultural communication is to approach the differences with humility and definitely curiosity instead of judgment. So before assuming someone is rude or wrong, just ask, what does it mean in their worldview or in their culture? And in Lee's case, if he would have just asked about the insults earlier, he could have understood the deeper meaning behind the behavior. By pausing and learning first, we can avoid so many misunderstandings and show respect to one another. So, one of my personal experiences I've had with cultural misunderstanding is I used to have exchange students over, as I said earlier, and we hosted these two girls from South Korea. And at first, they never spoke to us. They never made eye contact. They wouldn't start conversation. They wouldn't jump in conversation. And at my household, it's at the dinner table, everyone talks. Everyone says something random. It flows. And we thought that they didn't like us and they didn't want to talk to us because when they just wouldn't speak, they would stay quiet and to themselves. Later on, a couple weeks later, we were like, hey, do you not feel comfortable? Are you okay? And in their culture, it's respectful to be quiet and not speak unless spoken to. So, at the end, it was all worked out. But I believe the most significant lesson I learned from eating Christmas in the Kalahari would be that worldview deeply shapes how we interpret actions. What looks like disrespectful or rudeness might actually be an important cultural value at work. At least for me, it's a reminder that intercultural communication requires humility, patience, and a willingness to see through other people's eyes. That's the key to moving past misunderstandings and building real understanding across cultures. Thank you.